Ah, Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This morning, my talk is entitled Peace is Every Step. Peace is Every Step, which is inspired by a book by Thich Nhat Hanh of the same title. Peace is here now. And I think in that meditation we just experienced, we could feel that. We could feel that peace can just be in this breath that I breathe, breathing in peace and breathing out peace. Peace is really in every conscious step we take. It is ever available. And this Sunday, being the second Sunday of Advent, the traditional focus is on peace. Advent is the Latin root word for adventure. And so in Unity, we celebrate Advent as an inner adventure, exploring the mind and heart so as to give birth to greater Christ consciousness in ourselves. That is our metaphysical view of Christmas, that we are giving birth to greater Christ consciousness. It's happening now. It is not just a historical event. And so every Sunday we end our service here by singing, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me." We know that inner peace precedes world peace, and it has to begin in the mind and heart of each one of us. And so we can think of inner peace work. I like the term inner peace work as a way that we create a healing refuge within for whatever's going on, in us. Finding peace within has a lot to do with making peace with the parts of ourselves that we sometimes reject, that we sometimes have rejected. Peace work has a lot to do with interrupting old patterns, patterns of reaction, and using mindfulness to realize that we can do that. We can pause, we can breathe, and we can take a moment to return to that place that is more empathic, that is more centered, bringing in loving awareness, right? We all have Christ nature. Our very essence is Buddha nature, is the divine nature, divine mother nature. It's in us, it is us. And we all have the capacity to cultivate peace such that we are a walking, breathing, healing antidote and healing presence in this world with all the fear and with all the violence in our society. And we can be the antidote to that in our peaceful presence. You know, my favorite prayer is that prayer that we just said, the prayer of St. Francis, where there is hatred, let me sow love. I know that we all want peace on earth and we all want peace within. You know, we wouldn't be here if we didn't, right? So our evolutionary task as evolving humans is to overcome the old reptilian brain of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and find a more conscious way to respond. You know, we do have this antiquated part of our brain that's that reptilian brain that it's wired to take flight. It's wired to fight or take flight from lions and tigers and bears and all manner of scary things. And so this old brain, it's always looking out for danger. And when it perceives it, it gets ready. It gets ready to fight or to run or to freeze or to fawn, which means to immediately act to try to please, to avoid conflict. And if we understand that our brain's just wired to notice danger and to react in these ways for survival, that can generate a lot more compassion and empathy for ourselves. And that's really what we need. Instead of beating ourselves up for feeling fear or anxiety about danger, we can understand it's part of our brain's job. You know, it's wired into our biology. And a lot of society and a lot of, you know, the media kind of amplifies all the things we should fear. So we have to, you know, realize our biology responds to that, it reacts to that. And we have to take care of that and give that part of ourselves that reacts to fear and has anxiety, we have to give that part refuge. In our biology, we also have the capacity to feel compassion, to feel empathy, to feel connection, and to feel faith in the inherent goodness in one another and in all people. I read in the Daily Word, I think last week, I think it was a Daily Word though from last year, the Advent Daily Word from last year. But it said, make an effort this week while the focus is peace, make an effort to see everyone as a peacemaker. And so I've been practicing that this week. And I really love the way it makes me feel inside, because it makes me feel like I'm looking at someone and I know this beautiful secret about them, that they're a peacemaker, even when sometimes maybe they're not feeling that in the moment. They're not maybe fully realizing that. So our inner peace work involves inquiring within to explore when we are feeling unease, when we're feeling fear, anxiety, or anger, to bring loving awareness and give those difficult energies refuge. It's the loving awareness that will give the fear refuge and give the self-doubt refuge. And that creates, this container of refuge for the struggling parts of ourself. And that provides a way back to peace. That provides a transformation, right? So it's a very different approach than self-judgment. And I think that's probably what we tend to do more often than not, is we judge, the parts of ourself that we want to reject, whether we feel shame or guilt or whatever. Instead, this way of creating refuge is that we bring compassion in to the parts of ourself that suffer, that feel separate. Okay, so I heard a story of this guy who was coming home from a week vacation in Washington State, and he was driving back to Eugene, Oregon. And the guy stops at a rest stop, and he goes in, and the first stall is taken, and so he goes into the second stall. And just then, there's a voice from the next stall that says, "Hi there, how you doing?" And he thinks, that's weird, but I don't want to be rude. So he says, "Not bad." And the guy in the next stall then says, "So what you doing?" And he says, "Well, I've been on vacation in Washington, and now I'm heading back to Eugene with my family." And right after he says that, he hears the guy sounding totally pissed off and saying, "Look, I'll call you back. Every time I ask you a question, this idiot in the next stall answers." So stuff happens, right? Stuff happens. We get angry. Sometimes people get angry at us. We're just innocent sometimes. But our reptilian brain kicks in, right, sometimes. And when it does, it really creates a feeling of separation, And we all know the way we feel when we feel hurt, or when we hurt others, right? When things get said, things get done. And we know how sometimes we sense, sometimes it's passive aggressive energy, it's confusing. And sometimes we find ourselves acting from a place of hurt, and it's kind of automatic. And so, this process of inquiry is to kind of stop that automatic reaction, that old pattern, right? We inquire when it's happening. What's happening? Gosh, what am I feeling? Why am I reacting this way? What's the core of that? And then when we do that, when we've been triggered and we can just pause and take a deep look, we can move from that automatic fight, flight, freeze, fawn reaction to respond with what Buddhist teacher Tara Brach calls attend and befriend. I love that. Attend and befriend. We love ourselves enough to attend to what's happening when we're in a pattern, right? And we befriend the triggered places to learn to understand the tendency, right? That's how we change it. I'll give you an example of a pattern that I have worked on quite a bit through my life, and something I noticed about myself, something I learned when I was really young, kind of a survival technique. And I really started to become more mindful of it, though, and aware of it in my early 20s. And what it was I would notice sometimes that I would react if I didn't feel loved, if I didn't feel appreciated, if I felt, there was a lack of love, if I was being treated in a way that felt unloving or unappreciated. And when I would feel that, this story would start in my head about, well, if you don't appreciate me enough, then I'll just leave. I'll take my love and I'll take my gifts and I'll go. It's kind of like I'll take my ball and go home, right? And it was coming from a place of hurt, of feeling unloved. And it was an unconscious way of trying to get someone to express more caring. And to, it's kind of an unconscious way of sort of forcing that. And so over time, over the years, through becoming more mindful, I learned to watch myself when this, pattern would come up, when I would react. And I learned to pause, and I learned to give myself refuge. And I would say, oh, I see, I'm feeling unloved. And that old automatic pattern wants to react. But in the awareness that I am, I don't have to let it. I can interrupt this pattern, and I can pause when it's triggered. And there's various ways to pause. If it's a conversation, we can ask to continue the conversation later, right? If it's an email that's triggering, we can wait to respond. Very good idea to wait. Taking walks always gets me back to center. Nature clears the mind and clears the emotional energy. So we can pause when we're feeling inner unease and take steps to create an inner refuge for the parts of us that, perhaps we've rejected in the past, right? Or we tend to want to just kind of put away in a corner. I have a friend that is struggling with health issues right now, and I went on a walk with her, and I felt her, she didn't even really want to tell me because she felt embarrassed about it, because she had some idea of how she shouldn't have health issues, and when she finally shared it, I really felt all this compassion arise in me. And I was sharing with her kind of what I've been writing this week about, offering refuge to these parts of ourselves that think we're less than, or think that we should be embarrassed if our health isn't perfect, or we, giving refuge to that part of ourselves that, feels like we're a mess, and that's what creates inner peace, is meeting those places with the loving awareness that is the refuge. The judgmental mind judges, right? But the awareness says, this part of you that feels unloved needs you to attend to it and befriend it. Attend to it and befriend it. So, and part of the inner work for me on that pattern I was talking about is really realizing that I am dearly loved, and resting in this peace and love. And in that energy, then I can respond from feeling whole and complete. And it will be much more conscious, and it will be much more nourishing to everyone around me. Another aspect of inner peace work that's important to stay in touch with is our heart's aspiration, our greatest heart's aspiration. You could say the most important thing to remember is the most important thing. And inner peace, for me, is the most important thing. So remember the most important thing, your heart's aspiration, that you want to be at peace. That's important. Another aspect of inner peace work is taking responsibility for what we experience at all times. This pretty much just cuts out all the blame, right? To be responsible means able to respond. To be able to respond is so different than reacting. When we're reacting, we're kind of disabled, right? We're kind of out of control. But developing our ability to respond is incredibly empowering. It's very empowering. So those two things, our heart's aspiration and taking responsibility, have everything to do with cultivating inner peace. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Peace in us matters so much. Children of spirit we are, especially when we are given to this inner peace work. So I have a sweet little story I want to share by Kurt Kauder, and it's about an interaction between a coal mouse and a wild dove. So the coal mouse and wild dove met deep in the forest, and the coal mouse said to the wild dove, "Tell me the weight of a snowflake." And the dove answered, "Oh, it's nothing, nothing more than nothing." Well, in that case, I must tell you a marvelous story, the coal mouse said. I sat on a branch of fir close to its trunk, and when it began to snow, not heavily, not like a blizzard, no, just like in a dream without any violence, since I didn't have anything better to do, I counted the snowflakes settling on the twigs and needles of my branch. And their number was exactly 3,741,952. And when the next snowflake dropped onto the branch, nothing more than nothing, as you say, the branch broke off. And having said that, the coal mouse scurried away. And the dove, since Noah's time and authority unchanged, she thought about that story for a while. And she finally said to herself, perhaps there is only one person's voice lacking for peace to come about in the world. Perhaps there is only one person's voice lacking for peace to come about in the world. Your voice, our energy, it matters. The peace we contribute, each one of us, makes a difference. Blessed are we, the peacemakers. In Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Peace is Every Step, he writes, peace is present right here and now in ourselves and in everything we do and see. Every breath we take, every step we take can be filled with peace, joy, and serenity. The question is whether or not we are in touch with it. We need only to be awake, alive in the present moment. Okay, here's another story. I got a lot of stories today. I had a very different and kind of strange Thanksgiving this year. It truly put to the test that hypothesis that each moment could be one of peace, right? On Wednesday of this last week, the day before Thanksgiving, was that this? Oh, last week. Okay, last week. The day before Thanksgiving, Wednesday, my landlord came over to take out my AC unit, which is upstairs at the top of the steps, very steep steps. And he took the unit out, and as he was trying to bring it down the steps, it was leaking all this dirty water onto the carpeted steps. And so he called for me, and he said, bring a towel. And I came running up, and I put this towel against the air conditioning unit, trying to stop the water. And then some of the weight of the air conditioning unit came down. And anyway, here I am trying to go backwards down these steep steps without holding onto the railing. And I tweaked my back. I pulled a muscle. And it got worse and worse throughout the night. And then on that next morning, Thanksgiving morning, I could barely get out of bed. It hurt to walk, and it was impossible to sit. And so I just had to lie on the couch on my heating pad and take some Advil. And I was not able to drive the 45 minutes to my mom's for Thanksgiving. So I had to miss our Thanksgiving. And so I watched my mind. You know, I know it's nature well, and my mind wanted to label the situation bad, right? Bad, not good. It wanted to take me into, you know, loneliness, like terrible loneliness and feeling sorry for myself. And so I talked to my mind and I said, you know, mind, this is what is. You can have Thanksgiving another day. Your body needs you to lie down and let go and surrender to what is. And you can have a different kind of day and still be at peace. And, you know, my mind amazingly was agreeable. It said, well, okay, if we can watch Christmas movies, I won't make a fuss. And so I said, okay, we can do that. And so it was fun. I watched Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby and sing Christmas carols all night. So it's an example of a situation where, you know, I could have told a story of why I can't be happy now, you know, and a story of woe is me. But with mindfulness, I was able to watch that tendency, you know, and just really drop into non-resistance to what the present moment was bringing. Eckhart Tolle, I love his book, A New Earth, and he says that it's the ego that creates stories in our mind of why we can't be happy, and it's a habit. And sometimes it's just perpetual, finding a reason we can't be happy, you know. And this kind of chronic unhappiness creates unconscious attitudes towards life in general. So he has these three main attitudes that keep us unhappy. And I think these are so recognizable. See if you recognize any of these. The first story of why I can't be happy. Something is happening in the past that should not have happened. And I resent that. If that hadn't happened, I would be at peace now. But I think we all get stuck in this train of thought at times, you know, where it's hard to let go of a conflict. It's hard to forgive something happened there. The ego wants to keep blame alive, and it affects our present moment happiness. The second attitude of unhappiness is something's happening now that should not be happening, right? And it is preventing me from being at peace now. You know, this is, you know, this was my challenge on Thanksgiving. Something's happening now, it shouldn't be happening. I can't walk, I can't sit, I can't drive, I can't get to Thanksgiving. So do we resist what is or accept it and find peace anyway? That's always our choice. And as we grow spiritually, we realize we don't have to let challenging circumstances cause us to lose inner peace, right? We don't have to fight with what life is bringing. Then there's a third attitude Tolle talks about, and that is there's something that needs to happen in my life before I can be happy and be at peace. You know, say, for example, somebody believes they need to lose 20 pounds to be happy. They've decided that they can't be happy until that happens. So that sets up a state of unhappiness until those conditions are met, right? And that means missing a whole lot of potential happy now moments, right? Because you won't be happy until this future thing happens. So the teaching is we become more mindful and see if we're telling a story of why I can't be happy now. As soon as we see we're telling that story, you just brought in awareness, you just brought in presence, consciousness. And at that point, we can redirect the mind and we can say, well, actually, it is possible to be happy now. I'm going to turn my attention to peace that's available now. You know, like for me on Thanksgiving, I can just relax. I don't have to drive. I don't have to work as hard. I can have a quiet day. I can meditate more. So there's peace available now, and we turn our attention to that. The last point I want to make about inner peace work is learning to live with equanimity, and that ties in. It's like the cousin to non-resistance. You can describe equanimity as kind of an inner undisturbed calm, you know, unperturbed, undisturbed. And it's born of an understanding that everything is changing, everything is transient, it's going to change. It's going to be good, it's going to be bad, it's going to be easy, it's going to be difficult. That's the nature of life in form. The Bhagavad Gita has such a beautiful scripture on equanimity. It reads, grasping too tightly the things of this world, attachments arise. Holding on to how we want it to be, anger is born. Not understanding the inevitability of change. Confusion clouds the mind. Meet this transient world with neither grasping nor fear. Trusting the unfolding of life, you will attain true serenity. Trusting the unfolding of life, even when Zoom isn't working, even when equipment isn't working, even when we have strange echoes, trusting it, it'll change. My friend used to always say, one of my favorite sayings of his is practice duck medicine. When you practice duck medicine, it means whatever comes at you, whatever's happening, let it roll off you like water rolls off a duck's back. I love that. So in closing, let us take that joyous vow that we sing about to deepen in our inner peace work and to bring loving awareness to the places that don't feel at peace and to cultivate more non-resistance and equanimity. Let there be peace on earth and let there be peace in everyone here. Let there be peace in all our relations, and let all beings everywhere be at peace, be happy, and be at peace. May it be so. So it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, for that beautiful healing talk. It was truly healing for me.